Tonight, we are traveling back to the Victorian era, but we are not visiting the gaslit ballrooms of the aristocracy or the plush parlors of the rising middle class. Instead, we are stepping into the long, cold shadow of the Union, into the world of the Victorian Workhouse. This was a place where poverty was treated as a crime, where the architecture was designed to punish the soul, and where the rhythmic tolling of a heavy iron bell dictated every heartbeat of a human being's existence. Imagine standing before a massive soot-stained brick edifice that looms over the fog-choked streets of 1850s London. This is the Bastille of the poor. As the heavy oak doors creak open, you are met with a scent that will haunt your senses, a mixture of carbolic soap, coal smoke, and the damp, metallic breath of the stone foundation. Within these walls, the principle of less eligibility reigns supreme. Life here is a calculated symphony of deterrent rhythms, the heavy clack of wooden clogs on slate, the mechanical tearing of tarred hemp, and the silent, hollow consumption of gray gruel. This is the reality of the Victorian Workhouse. It is a world of achromatic monotony, where your clothes are taken, your family is divided, and your name is replaced by a case number in a ledger. Tonight, we immerse ourselves in the microscopic details of this industrial purgatory. We will feel the prickle of the coarse fustian uniform, hear the structural groan of the iron bed frames in the dark of the dormitory, and experience the boring necessity of a labor designed to break the body and reform the spirit. Close your eyes and listen to the rhythmic pulse of the Victorian machine. The gates are closing behind you. The world of the living is fading away. You are now a ward of the Union, standing before the gates of the Union Workhouse. The air is thick with the weight of the industrial winter. This is not a place of refuge. It is a monument to the new poor law of 1834. The architecture itself is a rhythmic deterrent. The bricks are laid in a Flemish bond of cold, unyielding red and blue-black, a pattern that repeats with a mathematical cruelty. You look up at the clock tower, the internal heart of the institution, which dictates a time that is separate from the natural world. In the workhouse, time does not flow. It is hammered. The heavy iron gates are designed with a specific rhythmic friction, their hinges intentionally annoyed so that every entry and exit is marked by a long, metallic groan that vibrates through the pavement and into your feet. This is the acoustic warning to the neighborhood. Another soul has been consumed by the machine. The scent at the threshold is your first introduction to the chemical identity of the Victorian state. It is a sharp, biting aroma of chloride, of lime and carbolic acid mixed with the damp, organic smell of hundreds of people packed into a space meant for half their number. This is the scent of institutional sanitization, an attempt to wash away the perceived moral filth of the destitute. You feel the cold radiating from the stone steps, a deep geological chill that has never known the touch of a hearth fire. This stone is the foundation of shame, and as you step across it, you enter a state of social death. You are no longer a person with a history or a trade. You are a pauper, a biological unit to be managed by the Board of Guardians. The visual rhythm of the entry hall is one of verticality and shadow. The ceilings are high and vaulted, designed to make the individual feel microscopic and insignificant. The walls are painted in a two-tone scheme, a dark, oily chocolate brown on the bottom half to hide the dirt, and a pale, sickly institutional green on the top. This color combination is the rhythm of the interior, a visual monotony that will follow you through every corridor and every ward. There are no pictures, no mirrors, and no soft surfaces. everything is hard, reflective, and cold. The light from the high, barred windows falls in rhythmic slants across the floor, illuminating the floating dust motes that dance in the stale air. This dust is the memory of the workhouse, the fine, gray residue of skin, wool, and coal smoke that coats every surface. As you wait in the waiting lobby, the sound of the master's keys becomes the primary rhythm of your existence. It is a heavy, rhythmic clinking of forged iron that signifies the boundary between rooms. The master is the absolute monarch of this space, and the sound of his approach is a signal for rhythmic silence. You sit on a backless wooden bench, the wood smoothed by the friction of thousands of desperate bodies. The bench is narrow and uncomfortable, a boring necessity of the design intended to prevent any sense of rest. You find yourself focusing on the rhythmic tick-tock of the heavy grandfather clock in the corner. Its pendulum swings with a gravitational weight, a mechanical metronome that marks the final seconds of your freedom. Every swing of the brass weight is a rhythmic severing of your past. The call comes, admissions. You are led into the probationary ward, a room of absolute clinical coldness. This is the site of the great stripping, a rhythmic deconstruction of the individual. You are ordered to remove your clothes, the rags of the world. This is the most profound moment of vulnerability. One by one, your garments are taken from you. The worn wool jacket, the patched trousers, the thin cotton shirt. Each item is a rhythmic tally of your former life. You watch as they are bundled and tied with a coarse hemp twine, labeled with a cardboard tag that bears your name, soon to be the last time that name is used. These clothes are tossed into a fumigation basket, a rhythmic thud of fabric that signals the end of your autonomy. Then comes the rhythm of the bath. In the Victorian mind, the great unwashed were a source of physical and moral contagion. The bath is not an act of comfort. It is an act of scouring. You are led to a galvanized iron tub filled with gray, tepid water. The water is shared. You are the third or fourth person to use it, and it holds the silted residue of the men who came before you. The soap is a hard, rectangular block of yellow carbolic, a substance so abrasive it feels like a mineral. The wadsman, an older inmate, given a small amount of power plies, the rhythmic scrub. He uses a brush made of stiff hog bristles, moving it in a steady, mechanical, circular motion across your back and arms. The sensation of the scrub is a sharp, stinging friction. It is a rhythmic invasion of your physical boundary. You feel the bristles biting into your skin, the carbolic soap burning into the small cuts and abrasions of your life on the street. This is the boring history of the body, the systematic removal of the dirt of the city. You watch the gray water swirl around you, a rhythmic vortex of your own history being drained away into the sewers. The sound in the bathroom is a hollow, rhythmic echoing of water hitting the iron tub and the wet slap of the brush against skin. It is a cold, acoustic environment that drains the warmth from your core. You are being neutralized, turned into a clean, blank canvas for the institution. Once the scrub is finished, you are forced to stand on the cold slate floor to dry. There are no soft towels. There is only a coarse linen sheet, a fabric so stiff it feels like paper. You rub the cloth against your skin in a rhythmic, shivering motion, trying to regain some sense of heat. Your skin is red and raw, smelling of the sharp, medicinal carbolic. This scent is your new skin. It will stay with you for years, a rhythmic reminder of the bath. Then, the workhouse habit is presented. It is a suit of fustian, a heavy twilled cotton and wool blend that is as stiff as armor. You pull the trousers on, the fabric grating against your scrubbed legs. You button the jacket, each horn button a rhythmic click of the lock. The clothes do not fit. They are universal sizes, designed to be achromatic and formless. As you stand in your new gray uniform, you look in the small, cracked mirror on the wall. The person looking back is a pauper. The transformation is complete. The rhythm of the stripping and the scour has removed the individual and replaced it with a component. You are now a part of the union's inventory. The wadsman hands you a pair of Whittle's heavy leather boots with wooden soles. You slide your feet into them, the wood feeling like a casket for your feet. As you take your first step, the clack of the wood on the slate is the first beat of your new life. It is a heavy, rhythmic sound that will define every movement you make within these walls. You are led through a labyrinth of identical green and brown corridors to the men's ward. The rhythm of the walk is the clack-clack of the wooden soles on the stone. Every few yards, you pass a gas jetta, flickering, rhythmic hissing of blue flame encased in a wire cage. The light is dim and pulsing, casting long skeletal shadows across the walls. You reach the dormitory, a room of infinite repetition. There are 50 beds, arranged in 2 rhythmic rows of 25. The beds are made of forged iron, their frames painted a dark, funereal black. This is the architecture of the night, a place where the individual is stored like a piece of industrial equipment. The bed itself is a rhythmic test of endurance. The mattress is a straw sack or a coir mat, a bag filled with coconut fiber that has been shredded into sharp, wiry needles. As you lie down, you feel the rhythmic prickling of the fiber through the thin linen ticking. There is no give in the mattress. It is a hard, unyielding surface that forces your body into a state of tense stasis. You pull the union blanket over you. It is made of shoddy, recycled wool that has been ground down and respun into a thin, gray fabric. The blanket is marked with a rhythmic union brand, a series of black letters that feel like a cold weight against your chest. The scent of the bedding is a mixture of dry straw, old sweat, and the faint, lingering smell of the fumigation oven. The sound of the ward at night is a symphony of the destitute. You hear the rhythmic creaking of 50 iron frames as the men shift in their sleep, trying to find a position that doesn't pierce the skin. There is a low-frequency hum of the city outside, the distant rumble of wagons and the whistle of locomotives. But inside, the air is stagnant. You can hear the rhythmic gasping of the man in the next bed, his lungs filled with the dust of the coal mines or the fibers of the cotton mills. This is the boring necessity of the dormitory, the hours spent in the dark, listening to the collective protest of the human body against the stone. You find yourself focusing on the rhythmic drip of a leaky pipe in the corner, a steady, percussive plink that counts the seconds of the night. The cold in the ward is structural, because the room is so large and the windows are kept slightly open for ventilation. The temperature is only a few degrees above the frost outside. You feel the rhythmic shiver of your own body, a mechanical vibration that attempts to generate heat. You wrap your arms around yourself, feeling the grating texture of the fustian jacket against your scrubbed skin. There is no warmth here. There is only protected exposure. You visualize the heat of the hearth fire you have lost, a rhythmic pulsing of memory that is slowly being extinguished by the reality of the iron. This is the psychological blackout of the workhouse night, a time when the mind is forced to confront the absolute void of its own prospects. As the hours pass, the ward enters a state of suspended animation. The wardsman makes his rounds, his rhythmic footsteps on the landing a signal of surveillance. He carries a lantern that casts a sweeping, long arc of yellow light across the beds, checking for refractory behavior or malingering. You close your eyes, but the light penetrates your eyelids, a rhythmic blinking that keeps you on the edge of consciousness. This is the rhythm of the watch, the knowledge that even in sleep you are a subject of the state. You are not resting, you are being stored. The morning bell will soon shatter this silence. But for now, you are locked in the iron sleep, a rhythmic endurance of the dark that is the foundation of the workhouse life. The transition from the shallow, iron-punctuated sleep of the ward to the brutal reality of the day is not gradual. It is a violent, percussive shock. The bell pulse shatters the silence of the dormitory. It is a heavy, unyielding iron bell, struck with a rhythmic, mechanical ferocity that vibrates through the very foundations of the building. The sound is not merely a signal. It is an auditory weapon designed to strip away the last remnants of sleep and impose an instant, rigid compliance. You feel the rhythmic vibration of the sound in your bones, a deep resonance that seems to shake the marrow itself. There is no gentle awakening here. There is only the command of the bell. The instantaneous response to this sound is a testament to the conditioning of the institution. 50 bodies rise from their hard, coir-filled sacks with a synchronized, rhythmic movement. You hear the creaking chorus of iron bed frames, a metallic groan that accompanies the mass rising. There is no fumbling, no delay. The wardsman patrols the aisles with a long, thin stick, its rhythmic tap-tap against the iron frames, serving as a perpetual reminder of the consequences of tardiness. You swing your legs over the edge of the bed, the coarse fustian uniform grating against your stiff, chilled skin. The air in the ward is stagnant and cold, heavy with the exhalations of so many bodies and the lingering scent of damp straw. The ritual of the morning ablutions is a rhythmic exercise in minimalism and exposure. You are marched to a communal washroom, a space of cold slate and dripping taps. There are no individual basins, only a long trough of icy water. The soap is the same abrasive, carbolic, passed from hand to hand. The rhythm is splash, rub, shiver. You dash the frigid water onto your face. The shock of the cold, a rhythmic sting against your skin. The wardsman monitors the washing, ensuring no time is wasted, his rhythmic pacing and watching a constant pressure. This is the boring necessity of the cleansing hurried, discomforting ritual designed to remove the night's grime but offer no personal comfort. Once washed, you are marched back to the dormitory for the bedroll. The straw sack, thin and unyielding, is folded into a tight, rectangular bundle. The blankets are folded with rhythmic, precise creases, their union brands perfectly aligned. The wardsman inspects each bed with a sweeping gaze, his eyes missing no imperfection. A misplaced fold, a loose blanket, these are not minor errors, but acts of defiance against the institution's relentless order. The consequences are immediate and rhythmic: extra labor, reduced rations, or the dark cell. This is the rhythm of the rule, a system that punishes the slightest deviation from the prescribed pattern. As the column of men or women moves out of the dormitory, the rhythmic clack-clack of wooden clogs on the stone floor fills the corridor. The sound is amplified by the high ceilings and the bare walls, creating a monotonous acoustic march that defines the transition from one section of the workhouse to another. You are a part of a larger, mechanical entity, a component in the vast disciplinary machine. Your own thoughts become muffled by the rhythmic external pressures. The bell pulse has not just woken you, it has recalibrated your very being. You are no longer thinking, you are reacting, moving in lockstep with the dozens of others. Your individual will slowly being eroded by the collective rhythmic force of the institution. The dining hall is a vast, echoing space designed for mass consumption rather than comfort. The walls are bare, the windows high and barred, letting in only a weak, filtered light that seems to struggle against the pervasive gloom. The rhythm of the meal is the rhythm of the ration. As you enter, you are assigned a specific place at one of the long, scrubbed pine tables. The wooden surface is worn smooth by the friction of thousands of elbows and the rhythmic scrubbing of generations of inmates. The air is cold and carries the faint, metallic scent of the gruel smell that will become irrevocably linked to the deep, aching sensation of perpetual hunger. Before you, placed with a precise, rhythmic clink by the taskmaster, is a coarse earthenware basin containing your morning meal. This is the gruel, a thin, gray porridge made from oatmeal and water. It is a liquid monotony, a substance designed to provide the bare minimum of caloric energy without offering any pleasure. There is no salt, no sugar, no fat, and no flavor other than a subtle, earthy bitterness from the unrefined grain. It is a punitive sustenance, a deliberate withholding of sensory satisfaction that ensures the inmate never forgets their status as a pauper. The visual rhythm of the gruel is a flat, unmoving gray, disturbed only by the occasional bubble of trapped air from its boiling. Accompanying the gruel is a ration of hard, dry bread. This bread is made from seconds flour, often containing chaff and bran that give it a coarse, almost abrasive texture. As you chew, you feel the rhythmic grinding of the husks between your teeth, a persistent, gritty sensation that underscores the low quality of the food. The bread is a density of deprivation, dense, unyielding, and difficult to swallow without the assistance of the thin gruel. There are no eating utensils beyond a single, heavy, pewter spoon, cold and metallic in your hand. This is the tool of compliance, for the act of eating itself is carefully regulated. Silence at table is the unbreakable law. The dining hall is a place of acoustic suppression. You hear the rhythmic scraping of spoons against earthenware basins, the clink of metal, and the occasional muffled cough, but no voices, no conversation, no exchange of human sound. The taskmaster patrols the aisles, his heavy boots making a rhythmic thud on the stone floor. His gaze is a sweeping surveillance, missing no infraction, a whispered word, a lifted head, a gaze that lingers too long. These are all acts of disorder that can lead to punishment. The discipline of the hall is absolute, a rhythmic imposition of the institution's will upon the most fundamental human act. The act of eating the gruel is a slow-motion devour. You bring the thin liquid to your lips with a rhythmic, measured movement, feeling its lukewarm temperature. It slides down your throat with a hollow passage, leaving behind no lingering warmth or satisfaction. The bread is broken with a rhythmic tear, its dryness absorbing all moisture from your mouth. This is the fuel of the machine, a measured intake of nutrients designed to maintain physical function for the labor ahead, but not to nourish the spirit. Your stomach feels a constant, dull ache, a rhythmic gnawing that persists even after the meal is consumed. As the final bell pulse signals the end of the meal, you rise with the others, leaving your empty basin and the crumbs of your bread. The benches scrape back with a rhythmic groan, a collective sound that marks the transition. You are still hungry. The discipline of hunger is the most pervasive and insidious rhythm of the workhouse. It is a constant, internal pressure that shapes every thought and every action, a physical emptiness that reminds you of your absolute dependence. You are being conditioned by calorie, systematically taught that any comfort, any satisfaction, is a luxury that you have forfeited by virtue of your poverty. The morning labor begins with the stone yard. This is the heart of the deterrent labor philosophy work that is hard, monotonous, and deliberately unproductive in its purpose, yet exhausting in its execution. The stone yard is a vast, open space, its ground paved with a thick layer of crushed stone, making the rhythmic clack of your heavy wooden clogs reverberate with a hollow, almost mocking echo. The air is cold and carries the pervasive scent of pulverized rocca, sharp mineral dust that catches in your throat and settles on your fustian uniform like a fine, gray snow. This is the dust of futility. You are assigned a stone-breaking cell, a small, three-sided enclosure made of rough brick, designed to prevent conversation or any form of human connection. The rhythm of your day will be the rhythmic crush. Before you lies a pile of large, unbroken flint stones, their surfaces hard and unforgiving. Your tools are a heavy hammer with a head of tempered steel and a small, square grid or sieve through which the broken stone must pass. The taskmaster patrols the yard, his silhouette a dark, rhythmic presence against the pale winter sky. His gaze is a silent threat, ensuring no moment of idleness. The process of breaking stone is a visceral, rhythmic engagement with the earth. You lift the heavy hammer, feeling its immense weight in your numb hands. The rhythm is lift, arc, strike. You bring the hammer down with all your strength, aiming for a weak point in the flint. The sound is a sharp, percussive crack that cuts through the cold air, followed by the rhythmic spatter of stone chips flying from the impact. You feel the shock wave of the strike travel up the wooden handle and into your arms, vibrating through your entire skeleton. This is the boring necessity of the labor, the relentless application of force to a resistant material. Your muscles begin to ache with a rhythmic, burning sensation, a constant protest against the strain. The visual rhythm of the stone breaking is one of microscopic destruction. You watch as the large flints slowly, incrementally yield to the hammer. Tiny, sharp shards of gray and black stone pile up around your feet. Your goal is to break the stone small enough to pass through the metal grid, a process that seems to defy the very nature of the material. Each successful strike, each handful of broken stone that falls through the sieve, is a rhythmic, almost imperceptible victory against the intractable rock. But the pile of unbroken stones seems to diminish at an agonizingly slow pace, a visual representation of the futility of your labor. The dust motes dance in the weak winter light, catching the rhythmic flash of the hammer as it descends. The taskmaster makes his rounds, his heavy boots crunching on the broken stone with a rhythmic, grinding sound. He checks your sieve, measuring the volume of the output against the task, a daily quota that must be met. A failure to produce enough broken stone means a reduction in rations or a night in the dark cell. This is the rhythm of the quota, a constant pressure that drives your body beyond its limits. Your fingers, numb with cold, begin to develop blisters and calluses, their skin thickening into a protective, rhythmic armor against the constant impact. The metallic scent of blood and iron begins to mix with the dust. As the sun climbs slowly to its zenith, the rhythmic clack of dozens of hammers fills the stone yard, a monotonous industrial requiem for wasted effort. You find a strange, hypnotic rhythm in the repetition, a way of focusing your mind on the immediate physical act until the world outside the stone cell disappears. The cold, the hunger, the shame, these all recede, replaced by the simple, percussive interaction between the hammer and the stone. This is the psychological grind of the workhouse, a systematic reduction of the human spirit through the medium of meaningless, repetitive labor. You are breaking stones, but the workhouse is breaking you, one rhythmic strike at a time. As the morning progresses, those not assigned to the stone yard are marched to the oakum room. This is a space of stagnant industry, a long, narrow hall where the air is thick with the scent of old setar. Oakum is the recycled hemp rope from the British Navy, discarded after years of exposure to salt, sun, and grease. The task of the inmate is to unpick these massive, tarred ropes by hand so the fibers can be sold back to shipyards for caulking hulls. The rhythm of the oakum room is a manual siege, a slow, agonizing process of dismantling a material designed to withstand the Atlantic Ocean. You sit on a backless wooden bench, your feet flat on the cold stone, and begin the rhythmic shredding of the rope. The visual rhythm of the oakum labor is one of microscopic unraveling. You hold a length of rope that is as thick as a man's wrist and as hard as a branch of oak. The rhythm is pick, twist, pull. You use a fid, a sharp iron spike to wedge into the tightly wound hemp. Each movement is a rhythmic construction of destruction. You watch as the dark, tar-coated strands are slowly forced apart, revealing the pale, dry fiber beneath. The light from the high, dusty windows catches the float of the hemp fibers in the air, creating a rhythmic, golden haze that settles in your lungs. This is the boring necessity of the indoor pauper, the hours of repetitive tension required to produce a single pound of loose fiber. The sound of the oakum room is a hushed tearing. It is a dry, fibrous noise that fills the room like 1,000 insects moving in the straw. You feel the texture of the rope through your fingertips, the abrasive bite of the hemp and the sticky chemical residue of the pine tar. This is a task of absolute physical focus. You must maintain a steady, rhythmic pressure. If you pull too fast, the fibers snap and become useless. If too slow, you will fail to meet the 3-pound quota by sunset. Your mind begins to synchronize with the friction. You follow the line of the twine under the knot over the spike until the world outside the workhouse disappears, replaced by the infinite, rhythmic repetition of the hemp. The sensation of the oakum picking is one of cumulative injury. The tar is acidic and corrosive, drying the skin until it cracks in rhythmic patterns along the knuckles. You feel the sharp sting of the fibers entering the small cuts on your hands, a constant, vibrating irritation. This is the boring history of the maritime fiber, the systematic extraction of value from the Navy's waste. Your fingers become leathery and blackened, the tar staining the skin so deeply that even the carbolic scrub cannot remove it. You have become a part of the material, your own skin adopting the rhythmic hardness of the rope. Every fiber you shred is a moment of your life that has been traded for the right to exist in the Union's shadow. The taskmaster moves through the room with a rhythmic surveillance, his presence marked by the clack of his boots. He checks the weight of the piles on the floor, his eyes searching for idleness. There is no conversation allowed. The only communication is the rhythmic swish of the fiber and the heavy breathing of the men and women. The room is a mechanical purgatory. You watch the sun move across the wall, a slow-motion tally of the day. The oakum is a record of your endurance. Its dark, shredded mass, a map of the pain you have absorbed during the long afternoon. As the pile grows, your energy fades, a rhythmic draining of the self into the service of the state. In the women's wing of the workhouse, the rhythm of the day is defined by the vapor of the wash. The laundry is a place of saturating heat and vertical motion, a damp, echoing hall where the air is a thick, white fog of lye and coal smoke. This is the labor of the great scour, the systematic cleaning of the institution's thousands of sheets, uniforms, and towels. You stand before a massive wooden dolly tub, your arms submerged in water so hot it turns the skin a rhythmic, pulsing red. The smell is an overwhelming mixture of boiling linen, sharp ammonia, and the metallic scent of the copper vats. The visual rhythm of the laundry is a study in fluid agitation. You use a dolly, a heavy wooden tool with 4 legs, to rotate the clothes in the tub. The rhythm is twist, plunge, lift. You move your shoulders in a steady, metronomic arc, the water creating a rhythmic vortex around the fabric. Each stroke of the dolly is a rhythmic construction of cleanliness. You watch the gray soap suds rise and fall, a visual record of the dirt of the ward being forced from the cotton. The light from the gas jets struggles to penetrate the steam, creating a flickering rhythmic environment where the walls seem to breathe with moisture. This is the boring necessity of the laundress, the hours of physical force required to manage the institution's hygiene. The sound of the laundry is a wet percussion. It is the rhythmic slapping of wet linen against the scrubbing boards and the heavy splashing of the copper boilers. You feel the vibration of the work in your back and your hips, a constant, repetitive tension that never eases. This is a task of absolute physical immersion. You must maintain a steady, rhythmic pace. If the clothes are not moved constantly, the lye will burn the fabric. If the heat is not maintained, the grease will not release. Your mind begins to synchronize with the steam. You follow the movement of the linen down into the heat, up into the air until your own body feels like a rhythmic extension of the machine. The management of the heat is a thermal discipline. Because the room is so humid, your clothes are constantly damp, creating a rhythmic chilling every time a door is opened. You find a rhythm in the discomfort, a way of breathing through the alkaline mist that prevents your throat from closing. This is a saturating labor. You are the guardian of the institution's visible order, the individual responsible for the whiteness of the master's shirts and the sterility of the infirmary sheets. You watch the water turn a rhythmic, muddy brown, a visual tally of the day's production. The laundry is a record of your strength, its steam-filled air, a map of the energy you have expended in the service of the union. After the washing comes the rhythmic wringing. You and another woman take the heavy, water-soaked sheets and twist them in opposite directions. The rhythm is pull, tighten, release. You feel the strain of the fiber through your arms, the water falling to the floor in a steady, rhythmic cascade. This is the final stage of the cleaning, a systematic extraction of the moisture. The sheets are then ironed with heavy, sad irons heated on a coal stove. The rhythm shifts to a smoothing motion, a slow, frictional sliding of the hot metal across the linen. The sound is a rhythmic hiss as the last of the moisture evaporates. This is the seal of the day, the final rhythmic act of the washhouse. The most profound rhythm of the Victorian workhouse is not one of labor, but of fragmentation. This is the rhythm of the separation, the systematic dismantling of the family unit upon entry. In the workhouse, Men, women, and children are housed in entirely different wings, separated by high brick walls and locked iron doors. The only time they might catch a glimpse of one another is during the Sunday service or the daily march to the dining hall, and even then, eye contact is a punishable offense. This is the acoustic isolation of the poor. A world where the people you love become social ghosts, living only 50 yards away. The visual rhythm of the separation is one of barriers and grids. You look out of your ward window if the glass is unfrosted and you see the dividing walls. These are made of the same cold, soot-stained brick, rising 20 feet into the gray sky. The rhythm of the brickwork is a repetitive denial of connection. You watch the women's yard from a distance, seeing the rhythmic movement of blue and white striped dresses, searching for the specific gait or the familiar tilt of a head that belongs to your wife. Each person is a rhythmic silhouette in a sea of identical uniforms. This is the boring necessity of the Victorian state, the belief that the poor must be disciplined into independence by removing the distraction of affection. The sound of the separation is the muffled echo. In the quiet hours of the night, you hear the rhythmic sobbing of the men in the ward who have lost their children to the juvenile wing. It is a low-frequency vibration of grief that fills the dormitory. You feel the absence as a physical weight, a rhythmic hollow in your chest. This is a task of absolute psychological endurance. You must maintain a steady, rhythmic stoicism. If you show too much distress, you are marked as refractory. If you attempt to send a message, you are sent to the dark cell. Your mind begins to synchronize with the wall. You follow the line of the mortar stone by stone, lock by lock until your own heart feels as cold and unyielding as the granite foundation. The management of the visits is a rhythmic exercise in controlled access. Once a week, if you have been orderly, you might be allowed to see your child through a wire screen. The rhythm is watch, speak, leave. You are not allowed to touch. You are not allowed to embrace. The screen is a grid of distance, a rhythmic interference that turns the human face into a series of disconnected dots. You watch your child's lips move, their voice a rhythmic drone through the mesh. This is the rhythmic torture of the union, the provision of the image of the family without the substance of it. You are the biological parent but the legal ward, a rhythmic paradox of the new poor law. As you return to your ward after the visit, the rhythm of the corridor feels heavier than before. The clack of your boots on the stone is a lonelier sound, a rhythmic reminder that you are an individual unit in a collective void. You look at the walls and realize they are not just built of brick. They are built of policy. Every hour you spend in the workhouse is a rhythmic hardening of the barrier between you and your former life. The separation is the core of the institution's power, a systematic depletion of the human spirit through the medium of isolation. You lie on your iron bed, the rhythm of the wards breathing around you, and realize that the wall is not just in the yard, it is now inside your mind. For many, the final destination within the union walls is the infirmary ward. This is a place of biological stasis, a long, whitewashed room where the rhythm of labor is replaced by the rhythm of decay. The air here is different. It is heavy with the scent of ether, oatmeal, poultices, and the metallic, cloying smell of old blood. In the Victorian workhouse, the sick are not patients in the modern sense. They are infirm paupers, individuals whose bodies have finally broken under the rhythmic pressure of the mills, the mines, or the stoneyard. You lie on a narrow iron cot, the frame rusted by years of spilled medicine and sweat. The visual rhythm of the infirmary is a study in clinical pallor. You watch as the pauper nurse, often an able-bodied inmate with no medical training, moves from bed to bed. The rhythm is wipe, turn, move. You see the rhythmic rise and fall of chest-labored breathing across the ward, a collective, mechanical struggle for oxygen. The light from the high windows is harsh and unforgiving, reflecting off the polished linoleum floor in a rhythmic glare. This is the boring necessity of the dying, the hours spent staring at the ceiling, tracing the rhythmic patterns of the cracks in the plaster. There is no comfort here, only the systematic observation of the end. The sound of the infirmary is a muffled percussion. It is the rhythmic clinking of glass medicine bottles against a tin tray and the steady, heavy slop of water into a wash basin. You feel the vibration of the ward in your own pulse, a rapid, thready rhythm that mirrors the exhaustion of your heart. This is a task of absolute physical surrender. You must maintain a steady, rhythmic patience. The doctor only visits once a week, his arrival marked by a brief rhythmic silence as the master accompanies him. Your mind begins to synchronize with the clock on the wall, a heavy brass object whose rhythmic tick is the only thing that separates 1 hour of pain from the next. The management of the sick body is a rhythmic exercise in depersonalization. When your dressings are changed, the movement is fast and clinical, a rhythmic tearing of the linen that ignores the protest of the skin. You are a case study in depletion. You watch the infirmary diet a rhythmic dispensing of thin beef tea that has more water than meat. This is the rhythm of the final fuel, a substance that sustains life just long enough for the paperwork to be completed. You feel the rhythmic chilling of your extremities, the heat of your body retreating toward the core as the stone-cold air of the ward claims your feet. As the night reaches its deepest point, the death watch begins. You hear the rhythmic, shallow gasps of a man 3 beds down, a sound that eventually tapers into a final rhythmic silence. The wadsman moves in the dark, his footsteps a rhythmic shuffling on the floor. He pulls the sheet over the face of the deceased with a steady, practiced movement. This is the boring history of the infirmary, the thousands of identical deaths that have occurred in this room. There is no ceremony, only the rhythmic clinking of the stretcher as the body is removed. You close your eyes, the rhythmic tick of the clock still counting, and realize that in the infirmary, your life is merely a rhythmic interruption in the ward's permanent state of emptiness. Beyond the infirmary lies the most feared section of the institution, the insane or imbecile ward. In the Victorian era, mental illness was often treated with rhythmic confinement. This is a place of acoustic chaos and visual distortion, a world where the mind is trapped in the same repetitive cycles as the body. The air here is thick and static, smelling of damp wool and the sharp chemical scent of bromide. You stand in a small, padded cell or a barred day room, watching the other inmates move in a state of eternal motion. This is the rhythm of the shadow, the final fragmentation of the self. The visual rhythm of the insane ward is a study in compulsive movement. You watch a woman in the corner rocking back and forth in a steady metronomic arc. The rhythm is forward, back, forward. She is weaving the air, her hands moving in a rhythmic, invisible labor that never ends. The light in the room is gridlocked, filtered through heavy iron bars that cast a rhythmic, ladder-like shadow across the floor. This is the boring necessity of the lost mind, the creation of internal rhythms to replace the external ones that have been stripped away. You watch the dust motes swirl in the barred light a rhythmic vortex that mirrors the confusion of the interior. The sound of this ward is a dissonant symphony. It is a mixture of rhythmic, nonsensical muttering and the sudden percussive banging of a fist against a door. You feel the tension as a physical vibration in the air, a rhythmic humming that never quite stops. This is a task of absolute sensory isolation. The warders use a rhythm of control, the heavy clack of the lock, the rhythmic rattle of the keys, and the steady pacing of the surveillance. Your mind begins to synchronize with the walls. You follow the rhythmic indentations in the padding or the grain of the wooden floor, trying to find a pattern in a world that has lost its logic. The management of the unsound mind is a rhythmic exercise in restraint. If an inmate becomes refractory, they are placed in a straitjacket, a garment of heavy canvas that imposes a rhythmic stasis on the arms and chest. You watch as the straps are tightened with a series of rhythmic tugs, locking the body into a permanent, frozen embrace. This is the rhythm of the cage. You are the social outcast within the outcast institution, a rhythmic paradox of existence. The scent of the canvas is dry and dusty, a smell of suffocation that replaces the air of the world. You are being stored in the dark, a rhythmic tally of the minds broken by the industrial age. As the sun sets, the ward enters a state of muted distress. The gas jets are turned low, casting a rhythmic, flickering pulse over the room. You watch the shadows of the bars move across the faces of the sleeping, a rhythmic masking of their features. This is the rhythmic erasure of the soul. You lie on your pallet, the thump-thump of your own heart, the only sound you can trust. You realize that the workhouse has not just taken your labor or your family, it has taken your reason. You are a part of the great Victorian silence, a rhythmic shadow in the corner of the state's conscience, waiting for the final bell to toll. The final rhythm of the Victorian workhouse is the rhythm of the earth. When a pauper dies, the institution performs the final extraction, the systematic removal of the body from the records of the living. This is the pauper's funeral, a ceremony of minimalist efficiency. You are placed in a shell, a coffin made of thin, unpolished pine, held together by the rhythmic strike of cheap iron nails. There is no nameplate, no handles, and no velvet lining. The smell is of raw sawdust and fresh pine, a scent that signifies the last piece of property the state will ever provide for you. The visual rhythm of the funeral is a study in industrialized mourning. You watch as the workhouse hearse, a plain, black wooden cart, loaded with 4 or 5 identical shells. The rhythm is slide, stack, lock. The cart moves through the gates of the Union in a slow, rhythmic trudge, the wheels creaking on the cobblestones with a repetitive, mournful sound. The light of the gray afternoon strikes the pine boards, making them look like pale shards against the dark city. This is the boring necessity of the undertaker, the hours of rhythmic transport required to clear the infirmary for the next case. There are no mourners, only the rhythmic pacing of the driver and the swinging of his whip. The sound of the burial is the rhythmic impact of the spade. At the pauper's pit, a mass grave in the corner of the cemetery, the earth is opened in a rhythmic, mechanical digging. You feel the vibration of the soil hitting the pine lids, a hollow, rhythmic thudding that signifies the end of the sound of the world. This is a task of absolute erasure. The shells are stacked 3 or 4 deep, a rhythmic layering of the destitute. The sound of the dust to dust is not a prayer, but a rhythmic transaction. You are being returned to the geology of the city, your body becoming a part of the foundation of the future. The management of the memory is a rhythmic exercise in deletion in the master's ledger. A single line is drawn through your name with a rhythmic stroke of the pen. Your case number is retired. Your habit is returned to the laundry for a rhythmic scour, and your whittles are given to a new arrival in the probationary ward. This is the rhythm of the cycle. You have left nothing behind, no stone, no marker, no record of your suffering. You are a rhythmic ghost in the census, a number that has been subtracted from the total. The scent of the fresh earth is deep and cold, a permanent silence that swallows the scent of the carbolic and the tar. As the cemetery gates are locked with a final, rhythmic clank, the story of the Victorian workhouse reaches its conclusion. The Union remains, its chimneys still breathing rhythmic pulses of coal smoke into the fog. The iron bell still tolls, its bell pulse counting the lives of the thousands who remain inside. You have traveled through the architecture of shame, the rhythm of the oakum, and the separation of the heart. You have seen the boring history of the state's cruelty and the structural endurance of the human spirit. The light of the gas jet flickers and dies. The rhythm of the city continues, and the silence of the pauper's grave is the only peace the institution ever truly offered. For the casual or the vagrant, the workhouse was known simply as the Spike. This was the temporary ward for those who did not intend to stay, but needed one night of shelter to survive the winter frost. The rhythm of the Spike begins with the cue of the shadows. You stand against the soot-stained brick wall in the alleyway behind the Union, the air thick with the choking yellow fog of a London evening. The rhythm of the cue is one of static shivering. You move one step forward every 10 minutes. The clack of your worn boots against the frozen cobbles, a rhythmic tally of the weight. The scent is a raw mixture of wet wool, old tobacco, and the metallic, biting scent of the sulphurous mist that clings to your throat. The visual rhythm of the cue is a study in bent silhouettes. You watch the line of men and women, their heads bowed against the wind, their bodies leaning in a rhythmic sway to keep the blood moving. The light from the single gas lamp over the casual entrance flickers in a rhythmic scattering pulse, casting long, distorted shadows that dance across the brickwork. This is the boring necessity of the homeless, the hours of absolute stillness required to earn a piece of bread and a wooden plank. You watch the breath plumes of the people in front of you, a rhythmic puffing of white vapor that disappears into the darkness. Every plume is a rhythmic leak of the body's heat into the void. The sound of the weight is the rhythm of the watchman. Every so often, the heavy iron wicket in the door slides open with a rhythmic, sharp, metallic scrape. A face appears in the square opening, lit by the amber glow of a lantern. The sound of his voice is a rhythmic barking. Next, that sends a ripple of movement through the line. You feel the rhythmic tension in your legs as you move closer to the door. The stone beneath your feet feeling like a heat sponge that is actively draining the life from your toes. This is the threshold of survival. You are not a guest. You are a casual pauper, a rhythmic inconvenience to the state that must be processed and expelled by sunrise. Once inside the Spike, the labor for the casual is even more specialized and brutal than for the permanent inmate. This is the rhythm of the crank. The crank is a heavy iron handle protruding from the wall of a small, solitary cell. It is connected to a brake or a box of sand on the other side. To earn your breakfast, you must turn this handle 10,000 times. There is no product. It is labor for labor's sake. The rhythm is push, over, pull. You grip the cold iron handle, the metal searing your palms. The scent of the cell is dry dust and cold grease, the smell of the machine that is about to consume your morning. The sound of the crank is a high-frequency screech. As you turn the handle against the resistance of the sandbox, the iron moans in a steady, rhythmic cadence. You feel the vibration of the grind in your elbows and your shoulders jarring, percussive resistance that makes your joints feel like they are being sanded. This is a task of absolute physical alienation. You are a human engine, a rhythmic generator of friction. You find yourself counting the revolutions, 1, 2, 3, for your mind, becoming a mechanical tally. If you slow down, the taskmaster, watching through a rhythmic peephole, will reset your count. This is the rhythm of the reset, the terrifying possibility that your labor will be erased by a single moment of fatigue. The visual rhythm of the crank cell is one of circular monotony. You watch the shadow of the handle as it moves across the whitewashed wall, a rhythmic circle of the void. The light from the high, barred window is a static, gray beam that illuminates the float of the sand dust escaping from the box. You watch your own knuckles turn a rhythmic white-gray as the blood is squeezed out of them by the grip. This is the boring history of the deterrent, the thousands of men who have turned this same handle until their hearts felt as hollow as the cell. Every turn is a rhythmic extraction of your dignity, a systematic proof that your time is worth less than the sand you are grinding. In the bowels of the Union, the workhouse kitchen operates with the rhythm of a feeding factory. This is not a place of cooking. It is a place of mass hydration. The central features are the steam jackets, massive, copper-lined vats that stand 6 feet high, powered by high-pressure steam from the central boiler. The rhythm of the kitchen is the rhythm of the boil. You stand on the wet flagstones, a massive wooden paddle in your hands, stirring the morning soup. The smell is a thick, humid cloud of boiling bones, fermenting turnips, and the sharp metallic scent of the steam valves. The visual rhythm of the kitchen is a study in obscured motion. You watch as the steam rises from the vats in rhythmic, billowing plumes that coat the ceiling in a permanent layer of condensation. The water drips back down in a steady, rhythmic rain that falls onto your shoulders and into the soup. You move the paddle in a slow, circular arc, the resistance of the thickening liquid a rhythmic weight against your muscles. This is the boring necessity of the cook, the hours of agitation required to prevent the sediment from burning to the copper. You watch the surface of the soup, a rhythmic bubbling of gray and brown that looks like the surface of a volcanic marsh. The sound of the kitchen is a constant hissing. It is the rhythmic pulse of the steam pipes and the clanking of the heavy iron lids. You feel the heat as a physical pressure, a rhythmic pumping of the blood in your temples. As the temperature rises to 80 degrees, this is a task of absolute thermal endurance. You must maintain a steady, rhythmic focus. If a valve is turned too far, the screech of the pressure will signal a potential explosion. Your mind begins to synchronize with the gauge, a rhythmic needle that bounces against the glass, measuring the power of the steam. You are the engineer of the meal, a rhythmic servant of the copper and the coal. Once the soup or the suet pudding is cooked, it must be portioned. This is the rhythm of the ounce. You stand at a long, lead-covered table, a set of brass scales before you. The taskmaster stands over you, his eyes fixed on the rhythmic swing of the balance. Every portion must be exactly the weight prescribed by the Board of Guardians, no more, no less. The rhythm is scoop, weigh, slide. You watch as the needle of the scale hits the mark, a rhythmic click of the metal that signifies the validity of the meal. This is the boring history of the bureaucracy, the belief that the poor could be managed by the decimal point. The sound of the portioning is a rhythmic thudding of wooden bowls hitting the table and the metallic scrape of the ladle against the vat. You feel the texture of the ration through the wood, the density of the suet, the thinness of the broth. This is a task of absolute precision under pressure. You move with a mechanical cadence, your hands a rhythmic shuttle between the vat and the table. The scent of the scale is a mixture of grease and cold brass, a smell that signifies the arithmetic of hunger. You watch the line of empty bowls stretching away into the shadows, a rhythmic void that you must fill with the calculated sustenance of the union. Deep beneath the kitchen and the wards lies the heart of the machine, the boiler room. This is the source of the steam that powers the laundry, the kitchen, and the few pipes that provide heat to the master's quarters. The rhythm of the boiler room is the rhythm of the shovel. You are the stoker, a man whose life is a rhythmic interaction with the firehole. The smell is sulfur, ash, and burning anthracite, a thick, dry scent that coats the inside of your mouth with a rhythmic grittiness. You stand before the glow, the heat so intense it feels like a physical wall. The visual rhythm of the stoking is a study in shadow and flame. You watch as the furnace doors are thrown open, a rhythmic blast of orange light that illuminates the dark, coal-stained walls. The rhythm is scoop, swing, throw. You move the heavy iron shovel in a steady, metronomic arc, the coal clattering into the white-hot center of the fire. You watch the rhythmic swirl of the flames as they consume the fuel, a visual record of the energy being released. This is the boring necessity of the heat, the hours of physical labor required to keep the peaking industrial breath of the workhouse moving through the pipes. The sound of the boiler room is a constant roar. It is the rhythmic sighing of the fire and the clanging of the iron furnace door. You feel the vibration of the steam pressure in the floorboards, the deep, rhythmic throbbing that feels like a heartbeat. This is a task of absolute physical exhaustion. You must maintain a steady, rhythmic cadence. If the fire dips, the pressure falls, and the laundry stops. Your mind begins to synchronize with the coal pile, a rhythmic mountain of black that you must slowly move into the furnace. You are the stoker of the dark, a rhythmic shadow in the depths of the union, ensuring that the machine never stops breathing. One of the most notorious labors in the workhouse was the bone mill, to provide fertilizer for the local farms. Inmates were forced to crush animal bones from the local slaughterhouses. The rhythm of the bone mill is a rhythm of the skeleton. You stand at a massive iron mill, or sometimes you use a heavy rammer in a stone trough. The smell is the arsent of the grave, a mixture of decaying marrow, dry calcium, and old grease. It is a scent that clings to your uniform and your hair, a rhythmic perfume of the dead. The sound of the bone crush is a nauseating crunch. It is a rhythmic, shattering noise that vibrates through your teeth. You feel the resistance of the bone through the tool, the snap of the femur, the grind of the skull. This is a task of absolute physical repulsion. You move with a mechanical cadence, the bone dust rising in a fine white cloud that settles on your skin in a rhythmic powdering. You watch as the remains of the herd are transformed into a mineral meal, a rhythmic visual of the extraction of value from the very foundations of life. This is the boring history of the fertilizer, the belief that even the bones of the dead should be made to pay for the pauper's bread. For the children of the Union, the workhouse was their only universe. The rhythm of the workhouse school is the rhythm of the slate. You step into a room where 60 children sit in rhythmic rows, their spines perfectly straight, their hands folded on the desks. The air is stagnant and chalky, smelling of dry dust, unwashed wool, and the metallic, biting scent of the inkwell. In the Victorian mind, education for the poor was a calculated minimum, enough to read a Bible or a factory manual, but not enough to encourage social ambition. The visual rhythm of the schoolroom is a study in rigid symmetry. The desks are long, backless wooden benches, arranged in a rhythmic grid that mirrors the bars on the high, frosted windows. The sound of the school is a mechanical chanting. The children do not learn through inquiry. They learn through rhythmic rote. You hear a chorus of 60 voices reciting the multiplication tables in a steady metronomic cadence. The rhythm is 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 2 is 6. Every syllable is pronounced with a rhythmic, staccato precision, a collective sound that vibrates through the floorboards. If a child falters, if their rhythm breaks, the schoolmaster's cane provides the correction. It is a rhythmic whack against the desk or the palm, a sharp percussive sound that reinforces the discipline of the letter. This is the boring necessity of the pauper child, the hours spent internalizing the moral arithmetic of the state. The sensation of the school is the scratch of the slate pencil. You watch as a small boy, his fingers red with the cold, draws a letter A on a piece of dark gray slate. The sound is a rhythmic, high-pitched screech that sets the teeth on edge. You feel the grit of the chalk through your own imagination, the dry, frictional resistance of the pencil against the stone. This is a task of erasable knowledge. Every word written is soon wiped away with a damp, rhythmic smear of a rag, leaving the slate blank for the next repetition. This is the rhythmic futility of their education. They are being taught to follow patterns, to move their hands in the prescribed arcs and angles of the alphabet. But the meaning behind the letters is secondary to the obedience of the hand. The management of the children's bodies is a rhythmic stasis. They are not allowed to fidget, to turn their heads, or to whisper. You watch as they sit for 4 hours at a time, their movements restricted to the rhythmic dip of the pen into the ink or the slide of the slate across the desk. This is a biological molding. The workhouse is shaping their bodies into cogs for the future industrial machine. The scent of the room is dry and dead, a lack of the green scent of the outside world. The children are social seedlings being grown in a cellar, their growth stunted by the rhythmic pressure of the union code. As the school bell tolls, they rise in a single rhythmic motion, a human wave of blue-striped cloth moving toward the dining hall, their minds filled with the rhythm of the table and the law of the state. When the rhythm of the workhouse is broken by an act of rebellion, a whispered word in the dining hall, a slow hand in the stoneyard, or a hidden piece of tobacco, the offender is sent to the refractory cell. This is the rhythm of the void. The cell is a small, windowless box of rough-hewn granite, located in the deepest part of the basement. The door is a double oak barrier, 6 inches thick, reinforced with iron plates. The rhythm of the entry is the final clang. You are pushed into the darkness, and the door closes with a rhythmic, vacuum-like thud that severs you from the world of light. The smell is ancient, damp stone dust, and the metallic scent of fear. The visual rhythm of the refractory cell is non-existent. This is a visual blackout for 24 or 48 hours. You live in a world of pure texture. You feel the roughness of the wall with your fingertips, tracing the rhythmic patterns of the mortar and the cold sweat of the stone. This is a psychological grind, without the sun to mark the time. Your mind begins to create its own rhythmic hallucinations. You hear the pulse of your own blood in your ears, a steady, rhythmic thump-thump that becomes as loud as a hammer. You are trapped in the biological metronome of your own body. This is the boring history of the punishment, the use of nothingness to break the will. The sound of the cell is the acoustic reflection. Every breath you take, every rhythmic sigh, is bounced back to you by the hard granite surfaces. You hear the rhythmic drip of moisture from the ceiling, a steady, percussive plink, 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 that marks a time you cannot see. This sound becomes an obsession. You find yourself waiting for the next drip, your heart skipping a beat if the rhythm changes. This is the torture of the constant. The workhouse uses the physics of the cell to turn your own senses against you. You are a rhythmic prisoner in a world of silence. Your only companion, the vibration of the pipes in the wall, carrying the hissing steam to the world of the living above you. The management of the prisoner is a rhythmic neglect once a day. The small wooden trap at the bottom of the door slides open with a rhythmic scrape. A wooden platter containing 6 ounces of dry bread and a tin mug of water is pushed through. The rhythm is push, wait, pull. There is no light, no voice, no human contact. You eat the bread in the dark, feeling the rhythmic crunch of the crust, the taste of the flour and grit being the only sensory input in 24 hours. This is the rhythm of the minimum. When the door finally opens, the blast of light is a rhythmic agony, a sensory assault that forces you back into the discipline of the union with a broken spirit and a blinded eye. To understand the rhythm of the workhouse, one must see the master's quarters. This is the inverse universe, a suite of rooms located at the center of the cross-shaped building. While the wards are spaces of achromatic monotony, the master's parlor is a study in Victorian excess. The rhythm of this space is the rhythm of the hearth. You stand in the doorway and see a fire of bright cannel coal burning in a polished steel grate. The smell is orange peel, fine tobacco, and the sweet scent of beeswax. This is the scent of authority. The master lives in a world of accumulated comfort, a rhythmic insulation against the misery he manages. The visual rhythm of the parlor is a dense decoration. The walls are covered in floral wallpaper, a rhythmic repetition of roses and vines that seems to choke the space with color. There are heavy velvet curtains at the windows, their deep crimson fabric hanging in rhythmic folds that block out the sight of the stoneyard. You see the master's desk, a massive piece of carved mahogany where he keeps the ledgers of the dead. The rhythm of his life is the rhythm of the pen. He writes the daily reports, his hand moving in a steady, flourished arc, a visual contrast to the scratch of the slate in the schoolroom. This is the boring necessity of the bureaucracy, the maintenance of the paper shield between the ruler and the ruled. The sound of the master's quarters is a soft acoustic. The heavy Axminster carpet swallows the sound of footsteps, creating a muffled silence that feels like a luxurious void. You hear the rhythmic clink of a silver spoon against a china cup and the soft ticking of a mantel clock made of marble and gold. This is the rhythm of the civilized. The master does not hear the bell pulse as a command. He hears it as a metric of productivity. He is the conductor of the machine, moving through his rooms with a rhythmic confidence that comes from the knowledge that he is eligible for comfort. You feel the thermal shock of the warmth, the heat that does not scour like the laundry steam, but cradles the body. The sensation of the master's world is frictional ease. He touches silk, polished wood, and soft leather. His uniform is not fustian, but fine broadcloth, a fabric that moves with a rhythmic fluidity. This is the cruelty of the contrast. The workhouse is designed so that the master and the pauper share the same air, but a different atmosphere. The master's life is a rhythmic tally of consumption, the wine, the meat, the books, while the pauper's life is a rhythmic tally of depletion. You look at the master's brass bell pull on the wall, a rhythmic shining object that can summon a servant pauper at any moment. This is the rhythm of power, the final, unbridgeable gap between the union and the individual. The final, most hidden labor of the workhouse is the maintenance of the void, the cleaning of the workhouse sewers and the privy vaults. This is the labor of the nightmen. When the city is asleep, a team of inmates is sent into the underunion to remove the night soil. The rhythm of the sewers is the rhythm of the sludge. You stand in a brick-lined tunnel, 4 feet high, the water reaching your knees. The smell is absolute and corrosive, a mixture of human waste, methane, and the metallic scent of rotting iron. It is a scent that aggresses the senses, a rhythmic assault on the lungs that makes the head swim. The visual rhythm of the sewers is total claustrophobia. You carry a bull's eye lantern, its yellow beam casting a sweeping arc across the wet, glistening brickwork. You see the rhythmic pulsing of the sewage as it moves toward the Thames, a dark, viscous tide that carries the residue of the institution. The rhythm of the labor is scoop, lift, bucket. You use a flat-headed shovel to remove the sediment of the city, the rhythmic squelch of the muck being the only sound in the tunnel. This is the boring history of the sanitation, the use of the lowest inmate to manage the lowest waste. You watch the rhythmic ripples in the sludge, a visual record of the union's biological output. The sound of the sewers is an eerie echo. It is the rhythmic splashing of your boots and the distant, hollow roar of the city above. You feel the texture of the sludge through your boots, the grittiness of the sand, and the slickness of the grease. This is a task of terminal degradedness. You move with a slow, heavy cadence, your back bent against the weight of the brick ceiling. Your mind begins to synchronize with the flow. You follow the movement of the waste down through the grate, out through the pipe. This is the rhythm of the sub-pauper, the individual who is tasked with the final cleansing of the state. The management of the night soil is a rhythmic extraction. The buckets are hauled to the surface on a windlass, the rhythmic clanking of the chain, a signal of the removal of the filth. You watch as the sludge is loaded into a night cart, its wooden wheels creaking in the dark. This waste is not discarded. It is sold as manure to the market gardens, a rhythmic recycling of poverty into the food of the city. This is the ultimate rhythmic irony of the Victorian-aged cycle of the gut, where the waste of the poor is used to grow the vegetables of the rich. You climb out of the manhole, your skin stained and stinking, and walk back to the carbolic scrub, the rhythm of the underunion still vibrating in your bones. For many children raised within the grim walls of the workhouse, apprenticeship was not a choice, but a mandated industrial release. At the age of 13, the union actively sought to dispose of its youngest charges by binding them to masters in factories, mills, or domestic service. This was the rhythm of the indenture, a legal document that marked the transition from one form of bondage to another. You stand in the master's office, the air thick with the scent of old parchment and cold ink, listening to the rhythmic scratch of the quill as your name is signed away. This is the boring necessity of the state, the systematic conversion of human children into units of labor. The visual rhythm of the apprenticeship ceremony is one of legal abstraction. You watch the master of the workhouse, a man whose face is a rhythmic mask of authority, shake hands with the factory owner, a stout man whose suit smells of coal dust and new cotton. The children stand in a rhythmic row, their new, ill-fitting work clothes, stiff and unfamiliar. For a boy, it might be a coarse smock and heavy wooden clogs. For a girl, a plain, dark print dress and a heavy apron. This uniform is the rhythm of the next stage, marking them as industrial property. The light from the high window falls in rhythmic bars across the documents, illuminating the flowery script of the contract that dictates their entire future. The sound of the ceremony is a muffled transaction. You hear the rhythmic rustle of papers, the soft thud of a wax seal, and the low, guttural voices of the men. There are no goodbyes, no parental farewells. The rhythm of the separation has long since severed those ties. You feel the emotional chill of the moment, a deep, internal coldness that matches the stone floor beneath your feet. This is a task of absolute emotional disengagement. You must maintain a steady, rhythmic stoicism. Any tears, any protest, marks you as unfit for service and risks being returned to the workhouse's permanent wards. Your mind begins to synchronize with the tick of the clock, a mechanical countdown to a new form of servitude. The sensation of leaving the workhouse is a rhythmic paradox of freedom. As you step through the main gates for the first time in years, the blast of the outside air is a sudden, dizzying sensory overload. The smell of the city, a complex mixture of horse dung, roasting coffee, and sulfurous smoke, is a rhythmic assault on your accustomed neutrality. The sounds of the street, the clatter of hooves, the shouts of hawkers, and the distant roar of machinery are a symphony of chaos after the regimented silence of the Union. This is the boring history of the industrial child, the rhythmic displacement from one ordered misery to another, less visible one. The reality of the factory or mill is a rhythm of the machine. For the boy, it is the rhythmic clank-clank of the power looms, the constant hiss of the steam engines, and the worry of the countless spindles. For the girl, it is the rhythmic swish of the scrubbing brush against the scullery floor, the clatter of cast-iron pots, and the endless folding of linen. Your body quickly adapts to the rhythmic stress of the new labor, your muscles learning the precise, repetitive movements required by the industrial master. The hours are longer, the wages are meager, and the conditions are often worse than the workhouse itself. But the illusion of independence is a powerful, rhythmic bomb. As the sun sets on your first day outside, you realize that the workhouse has merely exchanged one set of walls for another. The rhythm of the union is replaced by the rhythm of the factory, a different set of chains that binds you to the same systemic purpose. You are a pauper prentice, a rhythmic cog in the vast, unforgiving machine of Victorian industry. The scent of the factory floor, a mixture of grease, hot metal, and damp cotton, replaces the carbolic of the workhouse. But the underlying rhythm of your life remains a constant, mechanical pulse of labor and subservience, dictated by the relentless march of the industrial clock. Not all labor within the workhouse was confined to the stone yard or the oakum room. For some, the task was the picking of junk. This was the rhythm of the scavenger, a systematic sorting of the city's discarded remnants. You are led to a vast, open rag yard, a desolate space behind the workhouse, paved with a thick layer of compacted dirt and crushed refuse. The air here is a complex, rhythmic mixture of rotting cloth, rusty iron, and the sharp, chemical tang of old bones. This is the boring necessity of the Victorian economy, the extraction of every last particle of value from the waste of the rich. The visual rhythm of the rag yard is a study in chaotic order. Before you lies a mountain of rubbish, piles of discarded clothes, broken glass, rusty metal, and unidentifiable organic matter. The rhythm of the labor is sort, categorize, discard. You move through the refuse with a long iron hook, prodding the piles in a steady metronomic arc. Each probe of the hook reveals a new layer of detritus, a rhythmic unveiling of the city's discarded history. You watch as your fellow inmates, their hands gloved in thick leather, pick through the material, their movements precise and repetitive. This is the rhythm of the finding, the constant search for a piece of copper, a shard of useful glass, or a length of salvageable wool. The sound of the rag yard is a dry scrape. It is the rhythmic clatter of metal against metal, the rustling of old paper, and the crunch of glass underfoot. You feel the texture of the waste through your boots, the sharp edges of broken pottery, the softness of rotten cloth, the slipperiness of decaying fruit. This is a task of absolute sensory engagement with the underbelly of the city. You must maintain a steady, rhythmic focus. A hidden nail, a shard of glass, or a venomous rat can cause injury or disease. Your mind begins to synchronize with the decomposition. You follow the line of the decay from wet to dry, from whole to broken, till your own body feels like a rhythmic extension of the refuse heap. The management of the junk is a rhythmic classification. The salvaged materials are placed into separate bins: rags for paper mills, bones for fertilizer, metal for the foundry. The rhythmic thud of the sorted material dropping into its designated container is the only sound of progress. This is the boring history of the scavenger, the systematic rechanneling of the city's detritus back into the industrial machine. Your hands become stained with rust and grime, the ingrained dirt, a rhythmic tattoo of your labor. You are a human sieve, a rhythmic processor of the city's refuse, turning the waste of the rich into the meager profit of the union. As the sun begins its slow descent, the air in the rag yard grows colder, and the rhythmic clatter of the picking becomes more urgent. The taskmaster patrols the edges of the yard, his presence a rhythmic shadow against the piles of trash. He checks the weight of the sorted bins, ensuring that the quota of salvaged material has been met. A failure to produce enough means reduced rations or a night in the dark cell. This is the rhythm of the pressure, a constant force that drives your body beyond its limits. You walk back to the main building, the scent of the refuse clinging to your fustian uniform, a rhythmic reminder of the hours spent sifting through the discarded dreams of the city. While we have touched upon the darkness, the true winter blackout of the workhouse was a systemic, atmospheric rhythm of absence. In the deep winter months, gaslight was a luxury, strictly rationed, and often entirely absent from the wards and workrooms. This was the rhythm of the perpetual gloom, a deliberate imposition of sensory deprivation. You exist for 16 hours a day in a state of near total darkness, guided only by memory and the rhythmic shuffle of feet on the stone. The air is stagnant and cold, a thick, heavy blanket that presses down on your eyes and your lungs. This is the boring necessity of the workhouse budget, the saving of a few shillings by extinguishing the light of human comfort. The visual rhythm of the winter blackout is non-existent. You learn to navigate by tactile memory, your outstretched hands tracing the rhythmic roughness of the walls and the cold hardness of the iron bed frames. your eyes become accustomed to the false light of the absolute dark, where tiny phosphine sparks from rotting wood or stray glimmers from a distant window become a rhythmic illusion of illumination. This is a psychological grind. Without the sun to mark the passage of time, your internal clock becomes disrupted, your sleep cycles fractured by the rhythmic disorientation of the endless night. You are a rhythmic ghost in the corridors, your form a blur in the deep shadows. The sound of the blackout is an amplified silence. Every creak of the building, every distant clang of a gate, every rhythmic cough from a fellow inmate is magnified by the absence of light. You hear the rhythmic drip of moisture from the high ceilings, a constant, percussive plink-plunk that marks the passage of hours you cannot see. This sound becomes an obsession, your mind creating complex rhythmic patterns from the simple fall of water. You feel the thermal penetration of the cold, a rhythmic seepage that invades your clothes and chills your bones, intensified by the mental strain of the darkness. This is the boring history of sensory deprivation, the use of nothingness to break the spirit. The management of the inmates in the dark is a rhythmic surveillance. The wadsman makes his rounds with a bull's-eye lantern, its beam cutting a rhythmic, blinding arc through the gloom. The light is not for illumination, but for interrogation. It catches a face, a pair of eyes, and then moves on, leaving behind a rhythmic afterimage of paranoia. This is the rhythm of the watch, the knowledge that even in the deepest darkness you are still seen and judged. You hear the rhythmic click of the lock on the cell door, a familiar sound that signifies the end of your short daily reprieve. The sensation of the winter blackout is one of internal retreat. Without external stimuli, your mind turns inward, creating a rhythmic loop of memories and anxieties. The smell of the workhouse, the carbolic, the oakum tar, the cooking grease, becomes a rhythmic presence in the darkness. Each scent a reminder of a different misery, a rhythmic shuffle that prevents collisions in the confined spaces, This is the rhythm of the blind, a learned cadence that allows you to survive in a world without light. The rhythmic anticipation of the pale gray light becomes your only hope, a silent internal prayer that the hours of shadow will soon release their grip. When the clock of the Union is disrupted by a refractory act, a whispered word in the silent dining hall, or a slow hand in the oakum room, the offender is removed to the refractory cell. This is the rhythm of the void. The cell is a small, windowless box of rough-hewn granite, located in the deepest part of the foundation. The door is a double oak barrier, 6 inches thick, reinforced with iron plates that feel like frozen scales against the palm. The rhythm of the entry is the final clang. You are pushed into the darkness, and the door closes with a rhythmic, vacuum-like thud that severs you from the world of light. The smell is ancient, damp, stone dust, and the metallic scent of fear. The visual rhythm of the refractory cell is non-existent. This is a visual blackout. For 48 hours, you live in a world of pure texture. You feel the roughness of the wall with your fingertips, tracing the rhythmic patterns of the mortar and the cold sweat of the stone. This is a psychological grind. Without the sun to mark the time, your mind begins to create its own rhythmic hallucinations. You hear the pulse of your own blood in your ears, a steady, rhythmic thump-thump that becomes as loud as a hammer. You are trapped in the biological metronome of your own body. This is the boring history of the punishment, the use of nothingness to break the will. The sound of the cell is the acoustic reflection. Every breath you take, every rhythmic sigh, is bounced back to you by the hard granite surfaces. You hear the rhythmic drip of moisture from the ceiling, a steady, percussive plink, 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 that marks a time you cannot see. This sound becomes an obsession. You find yourself waiting for the next drip, your heart skipping a beat if the rhythm changes. This is the torture of the constant. The workhouse uses the physics of the cell to turn your own senses against you. You are a rhythmic prisoner in a world of silence. Your only companion, the vibration of the pipes in the wall, carrying the hissing steam to the world of the living above you. The management of the prisoner is a rhythmic neglect once a day. The small wooden trap at the bottom of the door slides open with a rhythmic scrape. A wooden platter containing 6 ounces of dry bread and a tin mug of water is pushed through. The rhythm is push, wait, pull. There is no light, no voice, no human contact. You eat the bread in the dark, feeling the rhythmic crunch of the crust, the taste of the flour and grit being the only sensory input. This is the rhythm of the minimum. When the door finally opens, the blast of light is a rhythmic agony, a sensory assault that forces you back into the discipline of the union with a broken spirit and a blinded eye. Every Saturday morning, the rhythm of the ward is suspended for the master's inspection. This is the ritual of the white glove. The inmates are lined up at the foot of their iron beds, standing in a rhythmic uniformity of terror. The air is thick with the scent of fresh limewash and vinegar, the remnants of a frantic morning spent scrubbing every inch of the ward. The visual rhythm is one of linear perfection. Every blanket is folded to the same geometric degree. Every bowl is placed at the same rhythmic angle on the shelf. You stand with your thumbs touching the seams of your fustian trousers, your breath held in a rhythmic suspension. The sound of the inspection is the rhythm of the approach. You hear the clack-clack of the master's polished leather boots on the stone landing, a sound that is distinct from the dull thud of the inmate's clogs. It is a sharp, authoritative frequency that cuts through the silence. He enters the ward accompanied by the matron, whose silk dress makes a rhythmic hissing sound against the floor. This is the acoustic of power. You feel the rhythmic tension in the room, the collective heartbeat of 40 men or women waiting for the brudgement of the dust. The master moves with a slow, mechanical cadence, his eyes moving in a rhythmic sweep of the walls. The white glove is the instrument of the Inquisition. The master reaches out and runs his gloved finger along the top of a doorframe or the underside of a bedrail. The rhythm is a slow, frictional slide. He brings the finger to his eyes, looking for the microscopic speck of dust that signifies indiscipline. This is the boring necessity of the Victorian administrator, the belief that cleanliness is not just a virtue, but a calculated submission. If the glove is stained, the rhythm of the ward is shattered. The master's voice is a rhythmic drone as he dictates the punishment to the clerk, a withholding of meat or a loss of the Sunday walk. The sensation of the inspection is one of structural vulnerability. You feel the master's gaze as a physical weight, a rhythmic probing of your character through the medium of your environment. He looks at your hands, checking for the rhythm of the clean nail. He looks at your hair, checking for the symmetry of the cut. This is the psychological blackout of the individual. You are not a person, but an area to be audited. When he finally leaves, the door closing with a rhythmic click, the air in the ward rushes back in. The inspection is a record of your temporary compliance, a systematic proof that the union owns not just your labor, but the very dust that settles in your room. Once a month, The deserving poor are granted an out day, a 12-hour release from the walls of the Union. This is the rhythm of the threshold. You stand at the main gates in your release clothes, a suit of plain, coarse cloth that is slightly less achromatic than the workhouse habit. The rhythm of the exit is the rhythmic clank of the gate-bolt sliding back. As you step onto the pavement, the world is a symphony of chaos. The smell is horse manure, coal smoke, and fried fish, a rhythmic assault on your senses after the sterile carbolic of the interior. You feel the rhythmic dizziness of the open space, the lack of walls making the sky feel like a crushing weight. The visual rhythm of the city is a study in uncontrolled motion. You watch the rhythmic swirl of the crowd, the horses' hooves striking the cobbles with a rapid, percussive clatter. The light is fragmented, the sun reflecting off shop windows, the flicker of gas lamps in the fog, the rhythmic flash of a carriage lantern. This is a sensory overload. You find yourself walking with the workhouse shuffle, your feet unable to adapt to the rhythm of the free. You are a temporary citizen, a rhythmic alien in your own city. People look through you, their eyes recognizing the institutional mark in your gait and the pale stasis of your skin. The sound of the city is a terrifying roar. You hear the rhythmic shouting of the street hawkers, buy, 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 and the screech of iron wheels. You feel the vibration of the underground through your boots, a deep, rhythmic thrumming that signifies the power of the industrial world. This is a task of absolute social navigation. You must find a way to spend your sixpence without being recognized as a pauper. You enter a pub, the smell of stale ale and pipe tobacco, a rhythmic cloud of nostalgia. You touch the wood of the bar, feeling the rhythmic warmth of the human world. But the feeling is transitory. You are always checking the public clock, its rhythmic tick, a reminder of the return. The management of the out day is a rhythmic anxiety. As the sun begins to set, the rhythm of the city changes. The light fades into a sooty twilight, and the shadows of the workhouse walls seem to stretch out across the town to find you. The return is a rhythmic gravity. You walk back toward the Union, the sound of your boots on the pavement becoming heavier with every step. The gates are waiting. The rhythm of the gate bolt sliding shut is the final beat of your freedom. You are reprocessed, stripped of your release clothes, and returned to the carbolic scrub. The out day is a boring history of the harder, systematic reminder of everything you have lost, making the walls feel thicker than they were before. Because silence is the supreme law of the Union. The inmates have developed a silent language, a rhythmic code of gestures and signs used to communicate under the gaze of the taskmaster. This is the rhythm of the secret. You sit in the oakum room, your hands moving in the steady, rhythmic pick-pull, shred of the labor, but within those movements there is an underpulse, a slight tilt of the head, a specific pattern of the fingers against the rope, a rhythmic tapping of the foot against the stone. This is the acoustic of the resistance. The air is still silent, but the information is flowing in a rhythmic stream between the benches. The visual rhythm of the secret language is subliminal. You watch the man across from you. He doesn't look up, but he moves his hand in a rhythmic circle as he clears the fiber. This is the sign for the master is coming. You respond with a rhythmic double tear of the rope. I understand. This is a visual encryption. The taskmaster sees only the boring necessity of the labor, the mechanical repetition of the hands. He does not see the rhythmic intelligence that is operating beneath the surface. You feel the rhythmic connection with your fellow inmates, a web of vibration that the institution cannot break. This is the only freedom left, the ability to share a rhythmic thought in a world of silence. The sound of the secret language is the frequency of the floor. You use your whittles, the wooden-soled clogs, to send rhythmic pulses through the stones. A double tap means food is low. A long slide means the matron is in a temper. You feel these vibrations in your own feet, a rhythmic telegraphy of the destitute. This is a task of absolute sensory synchronization. You must learn to read the floor while your hands are busy with the task. Your mind begins to split into two rhythmic channels, the official rhythm of the work and the hidden rhythm of the community. This is the boring history of the subaltern, use of internal patterns to survive the external system. The management of the secret is a rhythmic paranoia. If you are caught, the punishment is the refractory cell. You watch the taskmaster's eyes, looking for the rhythmic twitch that suggests he has noticed the pattern. You learn to bury the sign in a cough or a sneeze, rhythmic camouflage of the communication. This is the rhythm of the survival. The secret language is the only thing that proves you are still a human being with a voice. As the night bell tolls, you exchange one final, rhythmic sign of the hand with the man next to you. It is a muffled promise that you will still be there in the morning. The workhouse owns your body and your time, but it cannot own the rhythmic frequency of your secret life. Twice a year, the entire interior of the Union is subjected to the rhythm of the lime wash. This is not a task of decoration, but of atmospheric control. You are handed a bucket of slaked lime and a brush made of stiff, rhythmic bristles. The air is alkaline and choking, smelling of wet stone, caustic dust, and the sharp, chalky breath of the kiln. In the Victorian mind, whitewash was a moral filter, a substance that could physically bleach the despair out of a room. The visual rhythm of the whitewashing is a study in incremental erasure. You move the brush in a steady pan-down arc, the white liquid hiding the soot, the grease, and the rhythmic ghosts of the year's misery. The sensation of the lime wash is a corrosive contact. As you work, the white liquid spatters onto your skin, a rhythmic sting that turns into a dry, cracking heat, leaving your hands with a rhythmic tightness that makes it difficult to close your fist. This is a chemical transformation. You are not just painting a wall. You are sealing the institution. You watch the liquid dry, a rhythmic fade from translucent gray to a blinding, flat white that reflects the gaslight with a shaping glare. This is the boring necessity of the spring cleaning, the hours of repetitive tension required to maintain the illusion of sterility. You are the janitor of the void, a rhythmic servant of the whitewash bucket. The sound of the whitewashing is a wet, hissing slide. It is the rhythmic slow slap of the brush against the brick and the heavy dripping of the excess liquid onto the floor. You feel the vibration of the scrub in your shoulder, constant, repetitive pressure that never eases. This is a task of absolute physical immersion. You must maintain a steady, rhythmic pace. If the lime dries in streaks, the taskmaster will force you to scour the wall and begin again. Your mind begins to synchronize with the whiteness. You follow the line of the mortar up into the corner, down to the baseboard, till the wall itself feels like a rhythmic extension of your own arm. You are masking the history of the ward, one rhythmic stroke at a time. In the casual ward, or the spike, the rhythm of the night is dictated by the plank bed. Unlike the iron frames of the permanent wards, the casuals sleep on a solid oak platform, angled 6 inches higher at the head to act as a wooden pillow. The rhythm of the plank is the rhythm of the unyielding. You lie down on the wood, the hardness of the oak meeting the protrusions of your skeleton with a rhythmic, bruising pressure. The air is drafty and metallic, smelling of old sweat, street mud, and the cold, acidic scent of the stone floor. This is the architecture of the deterrent, a bed designed to ensure you never wish to return. The visual rhythm of the casual ward at night is a linear repetition of bodies. You watch the rows of planks, each occupied by a curled shadow of a man or woman. The light from the single low-burning gas jet is dim and flickering, casting a rhythmic pulse of amber light over the wood. You see the rhythmic shivering of the person next to you, their body moving in a steady, mechanical vibration to fight the cold. There is no bedding, only a rug, a heavy felted cloth made of recycled rags that is as stiff as a board. The rug has a rhythmic grittiness to it, its fibers biting into your skin like 1,000 tiny needles. This is the boring history of the vagrant, the hours of conscious immobility required to earn a morning espread. The sound of the spike is a hollow acoustic, every clack of a wooden clog, every groan of a shifting body, every rhythmic snore is amplified by the bare, unplastered walls. You hear the rhythmic drip of the outdoor pump through the wall, a steady, percussive clink that counts the seconds of your temporary confinement. This sound becomes an anchor. You find yourself timing your own breathing to the drip, your heart matching the beat of the falling water. This is the torture of the surface. The workhouse uses the physics of the oak to turn your own exhaustion against you. You are a rhythmic guest in a house of stone, your only comfort the static warmth generated by your own huddled form. The management of the casual is a rhythmic expulsion. At 5 a.m, the bell pulse shatters the silence. The rhythm is rise, fold, exit. You rise from the plank, your joints making a rhythmic cracking sound that mirrors the wood. You fold the heavy rug with precise symmetry, a rhythmic tally of your submission. There is no breakfast without task work. You are led to the crank or the oakum heap, your body already aching from the rhythm of the plank. This is the cycle of the road, the systematic extraction of labor in exchange for a night of wooden sleep. You walk back toward the gate, the rhythm of the street waiting to claim you once more. On Sundays, the rhythm of the labor is replaced by the rhythm of the pew. The chapel is the moral heart of the union, a space of high church discipline where the poor are reminded of their humble place in the divine order. The air is insensitive and cold, smelling of dusty Bibles, damp stone, and the faint, waxy scent of the altar candles. The visual rhythm of the chapel is one of symmetric separation. The men sit on the left, the women on the right, and the children in the front, separated by aisles of iron. The light from the high, stained glass windows is fragmented, casting rhythmic pools of red and blue across the gray fustian uniforms. The sound of the chapel is a monotonous chant. The chaplain, a man whose voice is a rhythmic drone, reads the liturgy with a mechanical precision. The response from the congregation is a muffled wave of sound. The rhythm is, "Lord, have mercy. Christ, have mercy." Every syllable is uttered with a rhythmic, staccato flatness, a collective sound that lacks the heat of faith. This is a spiritual audit. You feel the rhythmic boredom of the service, the hours spent sitting on backless benches that force the spine into a state of pious tension. If a child fidgets, if an old man nods off, the rhythmic tap of the Beatles staff provides the correction. This is the boring necessity of the pauper's soul, the systematic hammering of the word. The sensation of the service is the friction of the kneeler. You watch as the congregation kneels in unison, a rhythmic thud of 100 knees hitting the hard wooden boards. You feel the grit of the floor through your trousers, the rhythmic sting of the pressure against your joints. This is a physical supplication. You are being taught to wait. The sermon is a rhythmic lecture on the virtues of industry and the sin of idleness. The chaplain's hand moves in a steady, lit upward arc as he points to the heavens, a visual contrast to the downward gaze of the inmates. This is the rhythmic justification of the workhouse, the belief that poverty is a spiritual failing that can be cured by the repetition of the prayer. The management of the religious body is a rhythmic closure as the final Amen is spoken. The congregation rises in a single, rhythmic motion. The clack-clack of the wooden clogs on the chapel floor fills the space, a secular thunder that breaks the religious silence. You are marched back to the dining hall for your Sunday meat, the only meal of the week that has texture. The rhythm of the pew has done its work. You have been calibrated for another week of labor, your mind filled with the rhythmic duty of the destitute. The chapel doors close with a rhythmic groan, the holy silence returning to the stone, while you return to the iron pulse of the ward. For a lucky few, the day arrives when they are discharged. This is the rhythm of the exit. You stand in the probationary ward once more, but this time you are moving in reverse. The rhythm of the discharge is the return of the self. You are handed your original clothes, the rags you wore when you entered, now fumigated and flattened by the union oven. The smell is old dust and heat-stained wool, a scent that signifies the return of the world. This is the boring history of the individual, the recovery of the layer that the institution tried to strip away. The visual rhythm of the exit is one of expanding horizons. You walk through the inner courtyard, passing the stone yard and the laundry, the familiar rhythms of the labor now becoming distant memories. The light of the street beyond the gate is bright and unfiltered, a rhythmic shining that makes you squint. You see the master at his desk, his hand moving in a final rhythmic stroke of the pen as he closes your file. This is the legal release. You feel the rhythmic flutter of your own heart, a rapid, anxious beat that fears the gate will not open. You are a recovered component, a piece of property that is being returned to the market. The sound of the discharge is the clank of the bolt. The gatekeeper, a man whose life is defined by the rhythm of the key, slides back the iron bar. The sound is a short, sharp note of freedom. As the heavy oak doors swing open, the roar of the city rushes in a rhythmic assault of horses, carts, and voices. You step onto the pavement, the clack of your shoes, for you have returned. The workhouse clogs a rhythmic echo of your own independence. You feel the dizziness of the space, the lack of walls, making the world feel infinite and dangerous. This is the rhythm of the free, a cadence you have forgotten, a beat you must now relearn. The management of the ex-pauper is a rhythmic abandonment. Once you cross the threshold, the gate closes behind you with a final, rhythmic thud. You are no longer the union's responsibility. You stand on the corner, the scent of the workhouse, the carbolic and the lime still clinging to your hair. But the rhythm of the street is already pulling at you. You look back at the massive, soot-stained building, its windows high and ribbed, and realize that while you have left the institution, the rhythm of the stone will stay in your bones forever. You are a survivor of the machine, a rhythmic ghost walking back into the light of the 19th century. Your first step, a rhythmic promise to never return. Beyond the brick walls of the main workhouse, often tucked away behind the laundry or the bone mill lay the workhouse garden. This was not a place of beauty, but a productive necessity, a plot of land where inmates, too old or infirm for the heaviest labor, toiled to grow basic vegetables for the kitchen. This was the rhythm of the spade. You stand on the heavy clay-rich soil, the air thick with the earthy scent of damp loam and the sharp aroma of manure. In the Victorian mind, even the earth itself had to be made productive, and the pauper was merely an extension of that philosophy. The visual rhythm of the garden is a study in linear cultivation. The rows of cabbages, potatoes, and turnips stretch away in a rhythmic grid, mirroring the regimented order of the institution. The sensation of the garden is a visceral engagement with the earth. You grip the wooden handle of the spade, feeling its rough texture against your calloused palm. The rhythm is lift, plunge, turn. You drive the spade into the stubborn soil, feeling the resistance of the clay against your boot. The sound is a rhythmic thud scrape as the earth is turned over, revealing the dark, nutrient-rich soil beneath. This is a task of absolute physical endurance, made more difficult by the rhythmic ache in your lower back. The boring necessity of the garden is the hours of repetitive motion required to coax sustenance from the ground. You watch the rhythmic twitching of earthworms in the upturned soil, a reminder of the unseen life that thrives beneath the surface. The sound of the garden is a muted symphony of toil. You hear the rhythmic chink of other spades hitting stones, the distant caw of rooks in the elm trees, and the soft rustling of the leaves in the wind. These are the acoustics of the outside world, but they are distant, filtered by the rhythmic hum of your own labor. You feel the rhythmic penetration of the sun on your back, its warmth a fleeting comfort against the pervasive chill of the workhouse. This is a thermal paradox. The sun shines equally on rich and poor, but its warmth does not diminish the underlying misery. Your mind begins to synchronize with the cycles of the crop. You follow the line of the furrow seed to sprout to harvest until your own life feels like a rhythmic extension of the plant. The management of the garden is a rhythmic surveillance. The garden master, an older inmate given authority, patrols the rows with a rhythmic limp, his eyes scanning for idleness. He checks the depth of the furrow, the straightness of the row. Each detail a test of pauper discipline. A poorly dug trench, a missed weed, an uneven plant spacing. These are not gardening errors, but acts of defiance against the institution's relentless order. This is the rhythm of the quota, a constant pressure that drives your body beyond its limits. The scent of wet earth and growing greens becomes a rhythmic presence in your nostrils, a memory that will cling to your fustian uniform long after you leave the garden. As the sun begins its slow descent, the air in the garden grows colder, and the rhythmic clatter of the spades becomes more urgent. You walk back toward the main building, the scent of the soil clinging to your hair and clothes, a rhythmic reminder of the hours spent nurturing life within a place of death. You feel the rhythmic stiffness in your joints, the physical toll of the earthly grind. The gates of the workhouse close behind you with a rhythmic thud, and you return to the iron pulse of the ward, carrying the invisible weight of the soil and the rhythm of the spade in your bones. Long after the inmates are locked in their dormitories, a special detail of night cleaners is assembled. This is the rhythm of the midnight scour. You are led to the silent, empty dining hall, armed with buckets of scalding water, brushes of stiff bristle, and slabs of yellow carbolic soap. The air is heavy with residual odors, the faint, stale scent of hundreds of meals, mixed with the sharp pungency of old grime. In the Victorian workhouse, cleanliness was an obsessive ritual, a constant battle against the miasma of poverty. The visual rhythm of the night clean is a study in shadow and steam. The gas jets are turned low, casting rhythmic pools of amber light that struggle against the vast, echoing darkness of the hall. The sensation of the night clean is a visceral assault. You kneel on the cold, wet flagstones, feeling the abrasive texture of the scrubbing brush against the stone. The rhythm is scrub, rinse, dry. You drive the brush into the floor, feeling the resistance of the dirt beneath the bristles. The sound is a rhythmic hiss-scrape as the hot water meets the cold stone, releasing rhythmic clouds of chemical vapor that burn your nostrils and make your eyes water. This is a task of absolute physical exhaustion, made more difficult by the rhythmic burning sensation in your knees and hands from the lye in the soap. The boring necessity of the night clean is the hours of repetitive motion required to maintain the purity. The sound of the night clean is a hollow echo. You hear the rhythmic slop of the water in the buckets, the clatter of the brushes, and the distant, muffled footsteps of the wardsman patrolling the corridors. These are the acoustics of solitude, filtered by the rhythmic hum of your own labor. You feel the rhythmic chill of the damp flagstones penetrating your thin, fustian uniform, a constant, pervasive cold that settles deep into your bones. This is a thermal paradox. The scalding water on your hands, the freezing stone beneath your knees. Your mind begins to synchronize with the cycles of the stain. You follow the line of the grime from dark to light, from sticky to smooth until your own body feels like a rhythmic extension of the cleaning process. The management of the night clean is a rhythmic silence. The wadsman, a silent, rhythmic shadow, moves through the hall, his lantern casting rhythmic arcs of light across the floor. He checks for missed spots, for streaks, for any impurity that might mar the perfect surface of order. This is the rhythm of the inspection, a constant pressure that drives your body beyond its limits. The scent of carbolic acid and clean stone becomes a rhythmic presence in your nostrils, a memory that will cling to your uniform long after you leave the hall. You are the custodian of the void, a rhythmic servant of the brush and the bucket, erasing the stains of poverty from the stone. As the first faint light of dawn begins to penetrate the high windows, the air in the hall grows colder, and the rhythmic hiss-scrape of the scrubbing becomes more urgent. You walk back to your dormitory, your body aching and trembling from the rhythmic labor. Your hands are raw, your knees bruised, and your lungs burn with the chemical vapors of the night. The door to your ward closes with a rhythmic thud, and you return to the iron pulse of the bed, carrying the invisible weight of the cleanliness and the rhythm of the scrub in your aching bones. In an era before specialized mental asylums were widespread, the workhouse often served as the first temporary holding place for the insane. The arrival of the insane cart was the rhythm of the removal. It was a closed, windowless wagon, drawn by a single plodding horse, its wooden wheels making a rhythmic dull rumble on the cobbled street. The air is electrified with anxiety, thick with the unspoken fear of what lay within its dark interior. In the Victorian mind, madness was a social contagion, something to be removed and contained, often with brutal efficiency. The visual rhythm of the cart's arrival is a study in muted drama. The master stands at the gate, his face a rhythmic mask of grim resolve, waiting for the cargo. The sound of the cart's arrival is a muffled acoustic. You hear the rhythmic creak of the springs as it pulls to a halt and the distant whinny of the horse. But more terrifyingly, you hear the muffled screams from within, a rhythmic wail that is absorbed by the thick wooden walls of the wagon. This is the acoustic of the unheard. You feel the rhythmic tension in the very fabric of the building, you collective shiver of fear that ripples through the wards, even those far from the gate. This is a task of absolute emotional repression. You must maintain a steady, rhythmic stoicism. Any outward display of emotion marks you as unfit for the Union's rigorous order. Your mind begins to synchronize with the heartbeat of the cries. The sensation of the removal is a cold spectacle. You watch as two burly carters, often former prize-fighters or hardened laborers, fasten the heavy chains on the back of the wagon. The rhythm is clank, scrape, open from the darkness. A figure emerges, often restrained in a straitjacket, its eyes wide with a rhythmic stare of terror. The body moves with a jerking, uncontrolled cadence, a visual contrast to the rigid order of the workhouse. This is the rhythm of the broken mind, a life shattered by the rhythmic pressures of poverty, grief, or untreated disease. The pauper nurses move forward with practiced efficiency, their hands gentle but firm, their faces a rhythmic mask of clinical detachment. The management of the mentally unsound is a rhythmic containment. The figure is guided, often forcefully, toward the insane ward, a space of barred windows and padded cells. The rhythmic thud of the heavy door closing on the ward signifies the finality of the confinement. This is the boring history of mental illness, the systematic removal of those who could not conform to the rhythm of reason. The scent of fear and unwashed skin from the cart lingers in the air, a rhythmic presence that contaminates the illusion of order. You are left with the echo of the scream in your mind, a rhythmic reminder that the line between pauper and madman is dangerously thin. The cart pulls away, its rhythmic rumble fading into the distance, carrying its cargo of despair, and you return to the iron pulse of your own regulated existence, in a separate, heavily secured wing of the workhouse, often with its own high walls and barred windows, lay the workhouse bakery. This was the source of the ubiquitous pauper's bread, a dense, unyielding loaf that was the staple of every meal. This was the rhythm of the dough. You step into a room where the air is thick with flour, dust, and the heavy, yeasty scent of fermenting dough. In the Victorian mind, bread was not just food. It was a moral contract, a substance that required labor to produce and sustained labor to consume. The visual rhythm of the bakery is a study in mass production. Long wooden troughs line the walls, filled with vast, rhythmic waves of rising dough. The sensation of the bakery is a visceral engagement with sustenance. You stand at a large wooden table, your arms plunged into the warm, pliable mass of the dough. The rhythm is knead, fold, punch. You work the dough with rhythmic, powerful strokes, feeling its elastic resistance against your hands. The sound is a rhythmic thump-thump as the dough is slammed onto the table, releasing rhythmic puffs of flour dust that coat your uniform and fill your lungs. This is a task of absolute physical endurance, made more difficult by the rhythmic ache in your forearms and shoulders. The boring necessity of the baker is the hours of repetitive motion required to transform raw flour into the staff of life. You watch the rhythmic bubbles forming in the dough, a reminder of the unseen life of the yeast. The sound of the bakery is a deep, muffled hum. You hear the rhythmic creak of the massive kneading machines, if the Union was advanced enough to have them, the clatter of the wooden peels, and the distant roaring hunger of the brick oven. These are the acoustics of sustenance, filtered by the rhythmic hum of your own labor. You feel the rhythmic heat radiating from the oven, its warmth a physical embrace against the pervasive chill of the workhouse. This is a thermal paradox, the intense heat of the oven, the cold stone floor beneath your feet. Your mind begins to synchronize with the cycles of the bake. You follow the line of the transformation flour to dough, dough to loaf until your own life feels like a rhythmic extension of the bread. The management of the bakery is a rhythmic precision. The head baker, a stern, rhythmic shadow, moves among the tables, checking the consistency of the dough, the proofing time, and the weight of the loaf. He checks for air pockets, for uneven mixing, each detail a test of pauper obedience. A poorly kneaded batch, an underbaked loaf, an inaccurate weight, these are not baking errors, but acts of defiance against the institution's relentless order. This is the rhythm of the quota, a constant pressure that drives your body beyond its limits. The scent of hot bread and toasted crust becomes a rhythmic presence in your nostrils, a memory that will cling to your uniform long after you leave the bakery. As the sun begins its slow descent, the air in the bakery grows heavy with the aroma of freshly baked bread, and the rhythmic thump-thump of the kneading becomes more urgent. You walk back toward the main building, your body aching and flour-dusted from the rhythmic labor. Your hands are stiff, your shoulders sore, and your lungs burn with the dust of the grain. The door to your ward closes with a rhythmic thud, and you return to the iron pulse of the bed, carrying the invisible weight of the bread and the rhythm of the dough in your aching bones. Once a month, the internal rhythm of the union is disrupted by the arrival of the visiting committee, a group of local guardians, clergymen, and men of substance who come to audit the morality and efficiency of the institution. This is the rhythm of the external gaze. You stand at the foot of your bed, your fustian uniform brushed to a rhythmic crispness, your eyes fixed on a point 3 inches above the opposite wall. The air is heavy with the scent of lavender and tobacco, the smells of the outside world clinging to the committee's silk hats and wool overcoats. In the Victorian mind, this inspection was the sanctification of the system, the proof that the taxpayer's money was being used to correct the poor. The visual rhythm of the committee's walk is a study in power and proximity. You watch the group move through the ward in a rhythmic cluster, their polished boots creating a sharp, authoritative clatter on the stone that drowns out the shuffling heartbeat of the inmates. The light from the high windows catches the flash of gold watch chains and the white glint of starched collars, visual signals of a world that operates on a different frequency of wealth. They move with a slow, deliberate cadence, their heads turning in a rhythmic sweep of the room, looking not at the people, but at the surfaces. They check the linear alignment of the beds and the whiteness of the walls, treating the ward as an architectural specimen. The sound of the committee is a distant, educated drone. You hear the rhythmic mumble of their voices, the scratch of a pencil on a clipboard, and the heavy rustle of the master's ledgers. They do not speak to you. They speak of you, as if you were a biological variable in a larger equation. You feel the rhythmic tension of being observed without being seen. This is a task of absolute stillness. You must maintain the rhythm of a statue, your breath shallow and controlled, your face a blank slate of submission. Any movement, any unsanctioned sound would be a rhythmic breach of the peace that would bring punishment down upon the entire ward. The management of the public image is a rhythmic deception. The master leads the committee toward the dining hall, his voice a rhythmic crescendo of efficiency. He points to the ration scales, the steam jackets, and the clean slate of the menu, creating a rhythmic narrative of care that hides the reality of depletion. You watch them leave, the door closing with a rhythmic, prosperous thud, and the air in the ward rushes back to its stale equilibrium. The committee has seen exactly what the institution wanted them to see, a rhythmic success of the new poor law. They return to their carriages, and you return to the iron pulse of the void. Your life once again reduced to a statistic in the ledger. Every morning, following the bell pulse, those too ill for labor must stand in the sick call. This is the rhythm of the medical audit. You stand in a cold, damp corridor, your body aching with the fever or throbbing with a neglected injury. The air is heavy with the scent of carbolic and putrefaction, a smell that signifies the fragility of the pauper's frame. In the workhouse, sickness is viewed with rhythmic suspicion. It is the last refuge of the idle. The visual rhythm of the sick call is a study in biological failure. A line of stooped figures, their skin a rhythmic gray-green in the morning light, waiting for the judgment of the doctor. The sensation of the sick call is a trembling stasis. You lean against the cold brick wall, the stone drawing the heat from your skin, making your shivering rhythm faster and sharper. The sound is a rhythmic coughing chorus, a series of dry, backing barks and wet rattling gasps that echo through the stone passage. This is the acoustic of decay. You feel the rhythmic throbbing of your own heart, a rapid, panicked drum that fears the doctor will find you able-bodied. This is a task of performance. You must show enough illness to be excused, but not so much that you are marked for the infirmary, the place from which few return. The sound of the doctor's arrival is the rhythm of the watch. He moves through the line with a clipped mechanical cadence, his footsteps a rhythmic tapping of authority. He does not use a stethoscope. He uses a gaze of skepticism. The rhythm of the examination is tongue, pulse, move. He touches your wrist with chilled, impersonal fingers, his eyes fixed on the rhythmic swing of his pocket watch. This is the boring history of the medical officer, the systematic sieving of the truly sick from the malingerers. You hear the rhythmic scribble of his pen on the medical sheet, the word duty or infirmary, deciding the rhythm of your next 24 hours. The management of the incapacitated is a rhythmic triage. If you are lucky, you are given a black draught, a bitter, rhythmic dose of salts that is supposed to cure all pauper ailments. The taste is metallic and vile, a rhythmic burn in the back of the throat. If you are unlucky, you are sent back to the stone yard, your illness dismissed as a rhythmic deception. You walk back to your task, the rhythm of the hammer waiting to meet the rhythm of your fever, until the two become a single, discordant pulse of pain. The sick call is the rhythm of the filter, the mechanism that ensures the workhouse machine is never slowed by the weakness of the flesh. When an inmate's time at the union comes to an end, whether through a job, a relative's intervention, or voluntary discharge, they must face the final exit interview. This is the rhythm of the last word. You are led into the master's private office, the air saturated with the scent of leather, wax, and the master's breakfast. It is a room of acoustic softness, a rhythmic contrast to the harsh echoes of the wards. In the Victorian mind, this was the closing of the account, the final opportunity to calibrate the pauper before releasing them back into the social wild. The visual rhythm of the interview is one of fixed proportions. The master sits behind his massive mahogany desk, his hand moving in a steady, rhythmic flourish as he fills in the discharge column of the great ledger. You stand on the small square of carpet, the only soft thing you have touched in months. The light from the window is warm and golden, casting a rhythmic glow over the master's inkwell. You see your release papers lying on the desk, their rhythmic grid of information summarizing your entire existence into a few dry statistics. This is the boring necessity of the bureaucracy, the final conversion of a human life into a closed case. The sound of the interview is a deliberate cadence. The master's voice is measured and stern, a rhythmic lecture on the lessons of the house. He asks if you have any complaints, a question that is itself a rhythmic trap. If you speak, you are refractory. If you remain silent, you are incurable. You feel the rhythmic pressure of the choice, your tongue feeling heavy and dry in your mouth. This is the acoustic of submission. You hear the tick-tock tick of the master's clock, a rhythmic countdown to the moment the gate opens. Your mind begins to synchronize with the scratch of the pen signature. Date sealed the sounds of your legal rebirth. The management of the discharged is a rhythmic warning. The master hands you your small bundle of personal belongings, his eyes meeting yours with a rhythmic gaze of finality. He reminds you that the union is always open, a rhythmic threat that you will likely return. You take the papers, the crinkle of the parchment, a rhythmic note of freedom. You walk toward the door, your heart thudding against your ribs like a caged bird sensing the latch. The interview is the rhythm of the exit seal, the final mark of the institution that you will carry with you into the world. You are released, but you are marked, a rhythmic vibration of the ward that will echo in your gate forever. The final movement of the workhouse script is not a sound, but a sovereign silence. You stand at the great oak gate, the threshold between the iron pulse of the union and the chaos of the street. This is the rhythm of the absolute. The air is transitionary, a mixture of the carbolic interior and the sulphurous exterior. In the Victorian mind, this gate was the valve of the state, the point where the social waste was either recovered or expelled. The visual rhythm of the gate is a study in massive resistance. The heavy iron bolts, the weathered oak planks, and the rhythmic grid of the wicket window signify the totalitarian grip of the institution. The sensation of the final gate is a paralysis of choice. You watch the gatekeeper, a man whose life is a rhythmic loop of the lock, take the great brass key from his belt. The sound is a rhythmic rattle-clink, followed by the deep, heavy groan of the bolt sliding home. This is the acoustic of the end. As the gate swings open, the light of the world rushes in a rhythmic blast of reality that makes you recoil. You feel the rhythmic dizziness of the horizon, the lack of walls making the sky feel like an infinite, crushing blue. This is the boring history of the survivor, the moment the rhythm of the house is suddenly, violently unplugged. The sound of the world beyond the gate is a dissonant roar. You hear the rhythmic clatter of carriage wheels, the shouting of the market, and the distant toll of a church bell. But as you step onto the pavement, these sounds begin to fade into a fraternal echo. You look back at the Union, massive, soot-stained monument to deterrence. The windows are blank eyes, the chimneys are cold fingers pointing at the sky. You feel the rhythmic silence of the building, the thousands of lives still pulsing inside, unheard and unseen. This is the coda of the workhouse. The institution does not end. It merely recedes into the fog, a rhythmic ghost of the Victorian conscience. The management of the last step is a rhythmic erasure. You walk away, your boots making a new rhythm on the street, a cadence that is irregular, human, and free. But with every step, you feel the ghost weight of the workhouse. The scent of the oakum is in your hair. The grit of the stone is in your skin. The rhythm of the bell is in your blood. You turn the corner, and the union is gone from sight, but the silence of the gate remains. This is the final rhythmic truth. The workhouse is not a place you leave. It is a vibration you carry. The script ends not with a bang, but with the rhythmic fade to black of a single walking shadow, lost in the vast rhythmic machinery of the 19th century.